All right. Well, I guess I may as well start. So, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. So, you've probably are either part of my publication to the Tarot Talk or you are a reader, and I appreciate you. So, what we're going to talk about is we're not talking about divination. We're actually going to talk about how to use tarot cards to break out of writer's block and to tap into your creativity. All right. So here's the thing. All right. So let's just do a very short history lesson. I'm not going to bore you with the information about that because who really cares? But tarot cards were created in actually, they've been around for a long time, but they didn't become really a thing until the 15th century, as it was a game in Italy. But they were used as a divination tool in the 17th century, the 18th century in France, and then it just evolved from there. But now you can use it for so many other things other than divination, and creativity. Tapping into your creativity is one of those things. Okay. So it's really, really a good tool to use if you're struggling to come up with a topic to write about. Now, you have suggestions such as looking on forums, Quora, Reddit for ideas, and those are all great and everything. But if you can use your tarot cards, if you understand the meanings, the keywords that are associated with each card, then that'll trigger you to think about what you can write about. Whatever niche you're in, it doesn't even really matter what niche you're in, right? So let's do an example here. As I've got my Rider Waite deck here, okay? And I do recommend that is the deck to start with if you want to use this because it's easiest to understand, but you also want to get a deck that speaks to you. So let's take the Empress for example. So the Empress is about motherhood, anything to do with feminine energy associated with the planet Venus. Okay. So anything that has to do with motherhood is something that, okay, well, maybe I'll write something that has to do with motherhood. Okay, let's forget about that there. So it doesn't matter what niche you're in. Say if you write about food and drink, you can write about the top 10 most comforting meals you can make or something. Or you can talk about how to nurture yourself in certain ways. Like say if you write in the parenting niche, you can actually talk about ways that you can utilize self-care. Like those that's just an idea, right? That's just an idea. So those are the kinds of things that you can write about when it comes to the card having to do with Empress. And that's just one example. So let's choose another one. This is the Chariot. So the Chariot's all about determination. It's associated with the sign Cancer, and it's all to do with willpower and just not allowing anything to stop you from going after something, right? So you can again use it for any niche. Okay. So even if you're like in the say weight loss or whatever niche, like health niche, you can write about the best foods you can eat that'll give you the most energy. um, Also some ideas when it comes to exercises that'll pump you up, things like that. Whatever, anything that has to do with determination, anything that has to do with any of that, right? So, and listen, I welcome for anyone to ask questions. Okay, so let's just do another one. Okay, so we got the Ten of Wands, which is a burnout card. Burdens, burnout, stress. So there is a lot of stuff you can go with that. You can even write about times that you've had to deal with so much stress. If you've been burned out, what did you do in order to manage that? What did you do in order to help yourself and all that, take away from the stress? Those are the kinds of things that you can write about, and it doesn't matter what kind of niche you're in. It can go for anything. um, you could even talk about stress, anything to do with or strength training, even that would work for, like say, in the weight loss fitness niche. Also parenting niche, well, that's an easy one because parenting is stressful and it's very easy for parents to get burden. So what can you do to relieve that? What kind of tips? I mean, things like that. So you sort of get the idea. All right. So that's pretty much what that's about. And let's just do another one. Okay, so we got the Three of Swords, which is the heartbreak card. It has to do with heartbreak, betrayal, bad feelings, hurt feelings. So, that's another thing. Like, what can you do? How can you help yourself after a breakup, per se, or how can you help yourself after a friend backstabbed you? How could you help yourself during the times when you're feeling low? And if you want to go back to the, say, for instance, the food niche, you can talk about the best foods that can help you relieve any kind of depressive symptoms. See where I'm getting at? So um, that's absolutely how the tarot cards can help you when it comes to that. So you kind of get the idea of what to do. So that's really what this is about. So the best thing for you to do would be to get a tarot deck. I recommend the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and just understand the meanings of the cards if you don't already. And then once you do that, just associate the keywords that make the most sense to you with each card. You're going to develop your own meanings over time, but you just want to know the general meanings. And then that way, if you're really struggling with a topic idea, you can pull a card, and then you can then get some ideas. You can get some, like, you'll get your creative juices going, right? All right. And the other thing too is, if you're writing a story and you're not sure, like if you're writing an outline for a story, you can use the cards also to give you some ideas for plots. Okay, like say back to the Three of Swords. That you pull that, it's like, okay, well then you can write about, if it's a creative story, write about how one of the characters was enduring one of the worst breakups, and all that, and just to give you some ideas, right? So that's really how the tarot cards can help you. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the court cards. You've got the pages, the knights, and the queens, and the kings. So when it comes to that, it has to do with what kind of characters you're going to create. Okay, so the pages would represent children or young women under the age of 30. Okay, whereas the knights would be young men under the age of 30. The queens would be women over the age of 30, and the kings would be men over the age of 30. Okay, so if you're familiar with each suit, say the wand suit is associated with the fire element, and it's all about enthusiasm, creativity, passion. Okay, so the page of wands, for instance, could be a child who's very passionate, who's very determined, and even creative, or it could be a young woman, or a young girl who has those qualities. And this, same goes with the knight, which would be a young man under the age of 30 that has those qualities. Um, the Queen of Wands would be, I would say, like an independent woman who's motivating and confident and is very sure of herself. And the King of Wands, for instance, would be like the CEO, who's also passionate and determined. So I'm here for any questions. If anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer. So now I can talk about the sword suit. Okay, the swords is associated with air, which has to do with intellect and critical thinking, and also just reasoning and all that. It's one of the harshest suits in the minor arcana, right? But when it comes to the court cards, these are those who are communicative and thoughtful and all that. So when it comes to, say, the page of swords, you can think about a young woman or a child under the age of 30, a woman under the age of 30, who is very, I'd say even like a brainiac, if you will, or someone who communicates very well, someone who loves to read, someone who loves to study, etc. Right? And the same goes with the Knight of Swords, a young man that's under the age of 30 that has those qualities. Now, the Queen of Swords, one of my favorite cards actually, she is the no BS woman who says it as it is, has no filter, puts up boundaries, and very, very smart, thoughtful, and doesn't take anything, doesn't take any crap. The King of Swords is the um, again the CEO, but someone who's very thoughtful and communicates well and sends messages. Okay, so Molly, how are you doing? Okay, how did you come about using the cards for the purpose of fueling your creativity? So, okay, so that's actually a good question. This there's actually a lot of content out there. There's a lot of content about this. It's not just that I came up with it. I just ended up like seeing that it is one of the best ways to fuel your creativity. There's another writer on here on Medium. I believe her name is Jem Blackstone. She talks about that as well. So you can use the cards for creativity. You can even use it for art, etc. Um, I'm gonna have to look through my. I did. You know what? I'm gonna be quite honest. I'm. I didn't come up. I didn't prepare this as much as I should have because you know what? I'm just unfortunately I'm not overly organized. I didn't organize myself, so I will have some resources. I'm actually gonna write something about that about how to get there's a lot of books about this, so I can compile a list and tell you about that. Okay. Okay, so Robin, how are you? So you're asking, do you ever use the oracle cards as well, or any, or only tarot? I use Lenormand, but I don't use it for creativity. So I don't. That's really the only type of oracle that I use. And I mean, Lenormand is more practical. It's more tactile. It's more. It doesn't really help you delve into your thoughts too much. That's what I find with that. So that's about it, though. I mostly use tarot. Okay, Elizabeth Liu. Okay, I'm curious but not overly familiar with meanings behind the various cards. Any good books or references to learn more? Yes, biddytarot.com. She is amazing. She's got like an encyclopedia. Go to biddytarot.com. Like she's got a whole library, whole encyclopedia, and I would highly recommend that one. So she writes the card meanings in detail and does a really, really great job with that, I find. So that's what I highly recommend. Okay. So, all right. So now just keep asking questions. I'm going to answer as much as I can. All right. So now I'm onto the cups suit, which is associated with the water element. And that's all about emotion, family, and intuition. Okay. So the Page of Cups would be a sensitive child or a sensitive young woman under the age of 30. All right. So that's the kind of character that you could create when it comes to the Page of Cups. Okay, so the Knight of Cups would also be a young man under the age of 30 who's a romantic, who's creative and poetic, a little bit melancholic too, right? So he could be like a hopeless romantic. Now, the Queen of Cups is a woman who is very supportive, and she may be the type that gives way too much of herself and does not take care of herself as much as she could. So when that, you know what, you can think of when you think of the Queen of Cups, you can think of the nurturing, the mom that really lacks in self-care, who needs to take care of that more, puts her needs on the back burner all the time. And the King of Cups is an emotionally mature uh, man. Yeah, sure, he could be a CEO, but he's also very sensitive, calm, and friendly. But he'd be the dream boss. He would actually be the dream boss. So that's the okay. So the last suit in the Minor Arcana is the Pentacle suit, which is the earth, tied to the earth element, which is all about material practicality and health, anything physical, possessions, etc. Right, and also time. So when it comes to the Page of Pentacles, you can think of a child or a young woman under the age of 30 who's very business oriented, very practical, wants to be an entrepreneur, has always wanted to be an entrepreneur since the, say, age of 10 or whatever. Okay. Also, someone who's very a child that's very into money doesn't necessarily mean that they're good with money, but they're just into it. Right, okay. So the Knight of Pentacles would be a young man who's an entrepreneur or someone who's very much into making money, etc., who's, thinking about business. The Queen of Pentacles is a provider and a nurturer both. Now she's not nurturing the same way as the Queen of Cups, but she's still nurturing. She provides. She makes sure that everybody is taken care of. And the King of Pentacles is the CEO, very wealthy, very, very wealthy, who makes sure that everybody's got what they need in the family, or just make sure that everyone has what they need. And like I said, he's very wealthy. So those are some ideas if you were going to use those. If you were want to write a novel or a creative story and thinking about some characters, when it comes to the court cards, those are the examples that you could use. If you pull, like, say, as I said, you pull the Queen of Swords, as I said before, you can come up with a character who's just blunt and will say whatever she says that's on her mind with no filter and doesn't put up with anything. Okay, so that's the core cards. But also, here's the other thing. We're going to talk about the Major Arcana, which represents these cards are 22 in the deck that represent the major life stuff that you go through, right? Whereas the Minor Arcana is the everyday mundane stuff. But you can actually associate characters with each card in the Major Arcana too, if you want. So I'm just going to quickly run down over that. So the Fool is the first card. And the Fool is all about being ready to embrace the unknown, being ready to explore, and is just ready to go on to an adventure. So a character could have those traits. Then you got the Magician, who's the creator, the one who's very resourceful. And then you have the High Priestess, who is intuitive, like very psychic, intuitive, also secretive. And as I said, I talked about the Empress before, and very nurturing, the motherly type, very feminine. You got the Emperor, who's the leader, very masculine, who is very disciplined, organized. And then you've got the Hierophant, who's the priest or the counselor or a teacher, someone with those qualities, someone who could provide advice. That's what that's about. Also, you got the Lover's card, which is all about commitment. So somebody who's very committed, someone who takes things seriously, who makes, or you can have a plot that has to do with someone who's made a choice, made a commitment, and they have to stick with it no matter how bad or well it turns out, right? So those are ideas. And the next card is the Chariot, which I did talk about before. Determination, someone who's very determined, someone who's ready to tackle everything, someone who's just not going to allow anything to get into the way with what they want. And then there's Strength, someone who's had to be strong for whatever has been thrown at them, or someone who literally is strong, like someone who's working out all the time, someone who's very muscular, etc. So then we got the Hermit, someone who's like an outcast, or someone who just stays away from the crowd, and they're the type that just likes to contemplate, etc., and all that. So and then of course you got the Wheel of Fortune. That means turning of events. You could create a character that's tied to that card that can be the type that just keeps changing directions all the time and always looks for new opportunities. And then you've got justice, someone who tries to do the right thing. That's all about cause and effect. And then you've got the hanged man, someone who makes sacrifices, somebody who's a bit of a martyr. That's all what that's about. And of course, there's death. You can make that literal. Someone who's in the funeral industry, or that, whatever that means, transformation. So you can talk about someone who's undergone a huge transformation to the point that the old them is no longer there. Right. And then you've got temperance. That means just go with the flow, being patient. That could be someone who's a counselor. That could be someone who is a coach that helps, someone do that kind of thing. And then, of course, you got the devil. That's all about being overly attached. That's all about having material attachments and obsessions. So I'm sure you can come up with a character that's got those traits. You can get a little dark with that. And of course, there's the tower, someone who's got a terrible temper, somebody also who's been through the mill, and someone who went through a big shock that changed them forever. You've got the star, which can represent astronomy, literally. And also it means hope, inspiration, and all that. You can create a character that tries to make sure that they give others hope no matter what. Someone who tries to inspire them, maybe coaches them. There's so many things you can do with that. And then you got the moon, which is an interesting one. That can be a catfisher, someone who's deceptive, right? Somebody who is, presents something that's too good to be true, because it is. And you got the sun, which is the vital card, the positive card, success. You can come up with a story that has a character that has everything good happening to them all the time, right? And then you've got judgment, which is the awakening card. Someone who's literally had a big aha moment that has changed their perspective for good, right? And then you got the world, which means like finishing up a cycle. You can talk about someone who's graduated, or someone who's completed something big, or someone who's finally succeeded at something that they struggled to succeed at before. So I mean, there's a million ways you can go with this. So I'd love to, if you have any other questions, please ask me, because there's just so much, there's just a lot. And what I'm going to do is over the week, if you follow me on Tarot Talk, I'm going to write about a list of resources that I can point to you if you want to learn about how you can use tarot cards for creativity, to inspire it, because this is a great source, an absolute great source that can absolutely help you out to push through writer's block or help you create a story, etc. So it's really, really good. It's really good for inspiring your creativity. So I'm here for any other questions if you'd like. Okay. All right. So I would love for everyone to follow me, if you're not already, on Tarot Talk. And I write a lot about divination, and I go about other angles when it comes to some of the other tarot cards. But I'm going to add a little more creativity in my posts. So I really would love for you to follow. And if you'd love to contribute, I'd love to have you as a contributor as well, if you feel that is something that you'd be able to. So you just, read the guidelines on there and see if you can contribute any topics that goes with the theme for Tarot Talk. So I'd love to have you, and I'm going to give you another chance to ask questions. If not, all good. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to end a little bit early. So it was really great having you guys here. Much appreciated. And I'd love I'd love for you to connect with me, Miriam Rachel, Ms. Mir at medium.com. So you guys have a great rest of the Saturday afternoon. Where if you're in Eastern, if you're in Eastern, or if you happen to be elsewhere, have a great night, have a great day, have a great morning. You be well, and